Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Oh My K-Drama, your go-to channel for summaries of Asian dramas. Today's episode is unmissable, packed with emotions and twists, so make sure to watch until the end to be amazed. Don't forget to subscribe now, as that's the only way YouTube will notify you about my videos every day. Enjoy today's episode. The story begins with Karen, an Air Force captain who is often reckless. During a training exercise, while taking control of his fighter jet, the aircraft suffers a mechanical failure. His superior, Commander Tom Brav, orders him to eject before losing his life. However, Karen ignores the order to avoid putting other people's lives at risk, as the plane was heading directly toward a city. Fortunately, with his maneuvers, he manages to stabilize it. Despite this, his commander suspends him for disobeying the order. Frustrated, Karen looks at a photo with his wife, Mina. He remembers that 6 months ago, he lost her to some criminals known as Black Iron. He regrets not being able to save her and, since then, has not allowed anything to interfere with his missions, often ignoring orders. Coincidentally, Mina was the commander's daughter, who does not blame him for what happened. However, the commander realizes that since the incident, Karen has been seeking death and decides to suspend him until he believes Karen is ready to return to duty. On the other hand, we meet Dr. Iron, a researcher trying to find a cure for cancer. Her father, Kron Chit, was an Air Force doctor but gave up everything to lead a research center alongside his good friend, Dror Tyrap. The project, called Nadia, had not been progressing well, and investors were planning to suspend funding. However, Iron works hard to modify the research structure. She lost her mother to cancer and promised she would not give up until she developed the vaccine. Through a simulation, she achieves a potential success rate of 60%, which gives the green light for her to continue the work. However, there is a bigger problem. Some criminals, led by Sayuri, plan to steal the project since the formula could be used as a weapon. Iron hires bodyguards to protect the laboratory and inserts microchips to monitor the location of all the researchers. Meanwhile, Karen is being evaluated by his cousin, Dr. Pat. During a consultation, Karen overhears that a patient is missing. As he steps out, he collides with Iron, who is surprised by his good looks. She panics upon discovering that a patient has gone missing. Coincidentally, Karen finds a child trying to escape from the hospital. He takes the child back to his cousin, but Iron misinterprets the situation and yells at him to let the child go, thinking it's her son. The boy runs away and Karen chases after him. During the search, he finds a toy plane and uses it to talk to the boy. Karen realizes the child dreams of becoming a fighter pilot and convinces him not to be afraid of the hospital. The boy becomes excited to learn that Karen is also a pilot and expresses his desire to recover quickly to see his airplane. Unfortunately, at that moment, the boy feels a lot of pain. They rush to inspect him and discover that Iron is a doctor and that he is one of her patients. She treats him like a son because the boy is an orphan. It seems that Karen is interested in Iron, and someone informs him that she is single. He tries to distance himself to avoid hearing the conversation, but in the elevator, he meets Iron again, who continues to bother him with her intense stares. A friend of Iron decides to act as a matchmaker and tries to convince Iron to help cheer Karen up, as he is depressed about being excluded from training by the commander. Iron approaches Karen to talk and starts by throwing a paper airplane. She feels silly for not making it fly well, so Karen teaches her the correct way. Their closeness makes her nervous. Later, he gives her a ride back to the lab on his motorcycle. There, Iron's father informs her that there was a mistake in the latest results she presented, and they do not understand what went wrong. The next day, Karen's team faces another team during a training exercise. Gradually, he notices his teammates being eliminated. The commander orders Karen to fly his plane. Thanks to his help, they manage to defeat their rivals. Karen is thrilled to return, and the commander is called by the Ministry of Defense for an important mission, protecting the researchers of Project Nadia. He puts Karen in charge and calls his Special Forces team. Meanwhile, Iron's friend Y complains about seeing her with Karen and becomes jealous, showing anger at her being with another man. It is revealed that Y infected the computer with a virus, altering the project's data, which affected the research's efficacy. His motives are still unknown. Unexpectedly, Sayuri and her henchmen invade the company and kills several people. Iron and her father rush to delete all the data and manage to hide it before trying to contact the commander. However, they are captured by the criminals. At least they manage to make contact with the commander, and Karen is sent with his team to the lab. There, they face the criminals, eliminating several of them, although others have taken hostages. Meanwhile, Iron tries to escape from one of the criminals, but he traps her in the elevator. Fortunately, Karen arrives just in time to save her and orders her to leave the location as there are explosives. While his team deals with the criminals, Karen realizes that Iron disobeyed his order and came back to help him. During a fight, she cuts one of the wires, temporarily stopping the countdown, but after a while, it resumes. The criminals manage to take Iron's father and Tyrap. Sayuri is the one who activates the explosive. Karen's team manages to free the hostages, but everyone is worried because they don't know anything about the captain. Meanwhile, Karen and Iron try to leave the room but can't. They resign themselves to losing their lives, but the rest of the team arrives just in time and sees the captain carrying Iron. They quickly take her to the hospital, where Karen asks the commander to let her stay under his protection because he does not want her to go through the same as Mina. He promises to protect her. When Iron wakes up, she insists on leaving to search for her father, but Karen and his cousin try to calm her down. He promises to help her find him. Meanwhile, Kronchit and Tyrap are taken to Daniel, the man who took Mina's life. He tries to open the doctor's suitcase, but Kron warns that it will explode if the wrong password is entered. That's why Daniel decides he needs to find Iron. Then he sends his thugs to the hospital. Karen becomes suspicious upon seeing a doctor entering Iron's room, only to discover that the doctor has disappeared. He confronts the bullies and kills 3 of them, but more show up, forcing him to flee to Pat's office. There, he finds his friend, Captain Purit, who rushes to help him escape. Sayuri sends more men after them, but Karen manages to discover Iron's location. She had gone to her friend White's house, thinking she was safe, which makes Karen furious. He has no time to reprimand her, as the thugs surround the place. With only 1 bullet left, Karen devises a plan with Purit. Unexpectedly, Karen steps out of the house with his hands up, trying to distract the thugs. Sayuri demands he hand over Iron, but Karen firmly states that he will never yield to bad people. He throws a smoke grenade into the air, while Purit charges out, shooting through the smoke and taking down the thugs. The group manages to escape. Once safe, Karen harshly reprimands Iron, saying her recklessness nearly got them killed. She tries to justify her actions, explaining that she only wanted to check if her friend was safe. However, Karen had already warned her that Y's name was not on the list of those eliminated. In fact, he wasn't even at the company when the attack happened. Karen is extremely upset, but his friend tries to calm him down. He recalls Mina's loss and doesn't want history to repeat itself. Later, he takes Iron on the way to the airbase but stops to buy medicine. He notices her wrist is sore from being pulled earlier and doesn't know how to apologize. Iron criticizes him, saying she thought he was a kind captain but doesn't understand that he's just doing his job. Regardless, Karen remembers his encounter with Sayuri and realizes their rivals have all their information. He contacts his superior and informs him that he cannot return to the base to protect her. He decides to take her to his old marital home. There, he shows her some clothes she can wear, and Iron is surprised he has so many women's outfits. Karen doesn't reveal that they belong to his late wife. He asks her not to touch certain things or ask questions. He informs her he will get whatever they need. While Karen is away, Iron decides to take a shower but suddenly hears noises and goes downstairs to check, thinking it might be the thugs. Determined not to be afraid, she finds a gun in one of the drawers. At the same time, Karen's mother arrives. Karen hears a woman's voice and, startled, worries that his mother might misinterpret the situation. Matters worsen when Iron unknowingly points the gun at Karen's mother. To make things worse, the gun accidentally fires. Karen's mother, frightened, runs off to find her son. Iron realizes her grave mistake, but still holds the gun, making even Karen think she has lost her mind. Iron quickly puts the gun down and tries to explain the situation to Karen's mother, but he stops her. He takes her to the bedroom, thinking of how to explain everything to his mother. The only solution he can come up with is to pretend they are married. During their argument, they accidentally fall onto the bed together, and Karen's mother misunderstands the scene, fainting on the spot. Later, the commander arrives at the house and informs Iron that she must pretend to be married to Karen. He explains that the thugs stole the tracker her father had broken and that it is only a matter of time before they fix it and find her location. For this reason, Karen will protect her 24/7 and they must pretend to be a couple. Iron has no choice but to agree to the ruse and deceive Karen's mother. Karen's mother doesn't take the news well that Karen and Iron are pretending to be married, but Karen shows that he is in love with Iron. Elsewhere, we meet Jason, the director of Corp, who is actually the leader of the Black Iron organization. He is also Daniel's father and announces that he will collaborate in treating cancer patients. However, he only does this to get closer to Iron and coincidentally meets her. Jason makes the mistake of reviewing a photo, which irritates him. He forbids Iron from seeing Karen, leaving her furious. The two argue, and Karen carries her to the room to tie her up. Iron criticizes him for abusing his power and suggests he should go find his girlfriend instead of taking his anger out on her. Karen, frustrated, tells her to shut up, but Iron insists that he reconcile with his girlfriend. Without realizing it, her words deeply hurt him, and he reveals that Mina has passed away. At that moment, Iron realizes her mistake and tries to apologize. Meanwhile, Pat informs Karen that the little boy is in critical condition and needs to see his mother. Iron begs Karen to let the boy see her, so he devises a plan with his team to distract Sayuri's thugs. They make it seem as though the boy has died, but Sayuri arrives with Chatri and their men, confronting Karen's team. Meanwhile, Iron checks if her father saved a sample of the vaccine and decides to use it on the boy, taking a risk. Fortunately, the special forces manage to buy time for the commander, who decides to transfer the boy. Iron, however, doesn't want to leave without Karen and becomes emotional upon hearing his voice, showing concern for him. Despite the short time, they both tear up before parting ways. Later, Iron is taken to a military house, where she is guarded by a Nop-Piece Saren. Meanwhile, Karen looks for Detective Kanan, who is in trouble with the gang. Karen eliminates the enemies and asks Kanan for help finding Kennel, whose face seems familiar. Despite this, Karen still doesn't know where he is. During a chase, he eliminates one of the men and infiltrates a hospital disguised on a bus. With Pat's information, Karen manages to find Iron's mother and uses her as bait to meet Iron. He is convinced that Y betrayed Iron's father, but Iron trusts her friend and agrees to meet him. However, the situation escalates when a staff member sees Karen with a gun and thinks he is fighting Y over Iron. While they are distracted, Y seizes the opportunity to capture Iron. Naively, she follows him but soon discovers he has taken her to the docks. Y reveals he didn't betray their people but got involved with gangsters because of a huge debt. He asks Iron to return to Karen so the army can protect them, but he admits he doesn't trust anyone. Y believes the vaccine formula can be modified to create a biological weapon and fears even the military might use it to increase their power. For this reason, he wants to take Iron to a refuge where no one can find them. However, Y didn't expect to be betrayed by his own guide, and he and Iron are surrounded by thugs. Y urges Iron to run, but during the process, Karen shows up and saves her before she can be harmed. Iron pleads with Karen to save Y as well, but Y chooses to escape alone. Meanwhile, Jason tries to convince Kron Chit to disclose information about the project, but he refuses. Jason intimidates Tyrap to pressure Kron Chit, but nothing works. The villain warns that Kron won't be so strong when he sees his daughter suffer, but Kron insists he would rather die than reveal the secret. What no one imagines is that Tyrap is working with the enemy. He was the one who developed a lethal substance and needs more power, which is why he wants the vaccine formula. Searching for information, Jason learns about a hacker who can track Iron's microchip. He sends his men after the hacker, but Karen and Kanan are also on his trail. Although the hacker manages to escape, Iron is called to meet with the Minister of Defense along with the commander, as they want to know more about the project. It turns out the project was spying on Iron at the military house and is aware of how powerful the vaccine formula is. Iron fears they might use the project for ulterior motives and refuses to give them information. She slaps Karen upon discovering he had hidden the presence of cameras in the house from her, but doesn't realize he was merely following orders. The commander asks Karen to return to the meeting room, where they explain that the vaccine is not meant to be turned into a weapon but to help humanity. They assure Iron that she should lead the project and only need her cooperation. They ask her to trust them, but for that, she must undergo military training. Although Iron struggles to adapt at first, she gradually becomes nearly an expert. The last step of her training is to jump from a plane, something that terrifies her. Karen convinces her to trust him and holds her tightly as they fall. She feels accomplished after overcoming her fear and is ready for the mission. However, Iron becomes upset upon learning she has to change her appearance and wear different clothing to pretend to be Karen's wife. Reluctantly, she accepts the makeover. Others are stunned by her transformation. Karen takes her to a beach where they will stay for a while to convince the locals they are a couple. Karen's team also accompanies them to ensure Iron's safety. In one scene, Iron gets nervous seeing Karen wearing only a towel. Unbothered, he playfully approaches her, teasing her. However, he receives a call from Detective Kanan and has to leave. Johnny and Karen arrive at an abandoned building where the hacker is hiding. The thugs are also there and chase Johnny. Karen and Kanan manage to save Johnny, but as they try to escape, they are attacked by the thugs. Karen finally comes face to face with Deo and remembers the tragic scene involving Mina. He wants to eliminate Daniel, but the thugs outnumber them, and Kanan stops him from acting recklessly. The villains take the hacker, and Jason orders his men to kill Karen and Kanan. Fortunately, reinforcements arrive in time to save Karen. Although Karen wants to pursue Daniel, Kanan stops him and tries to make him understand that his mission is to protect the country, not seek revenge. Kanan warns Karen that if he cannot abandon his hatred, he should resign. Filled with rage and unable to control his emotions, Karen isolates himself and doesn't return home to Iron, who grows worried about his absence. One night, Iron hears noises in the kitchen and grabs her gun, only to find Karen. He notices her gun wasn't even loaded and gets angry, feeling she doesn't take her safety seriously. Iron, confused, doesn't understand why he's so upset. Karen explains that her life is his responsibility and that he cannot allow another mistake like in the past, as it would mean giving up being a soldier. He recalls Mina's accident. She was a flight attendant, and 6 months ago, he had said goodbye before her last flight before vacation. Unfortunately, the Black Iron Gang hijacked the flight in exchange for Daniel's release. Karen fell into their trap and blames himself for Mina's loss. After his bath, he notices Iron prepared dinner for him. Although she tries to hide it, Karen sees her burned hands. She acts like a psychologist and helps him understand that Mina's death wasn't his fault. Moved, he kisses her, leaving her flustered. The next morning, Karen receives information that Iron's microchip signal was disconnected. He asks her to keep it secret and quickly leaves. Worried about Iron's disappearance, he finds her reading her books, acting as if nothing happened. He suspects something is off but doesn't press her. Meanwhile, Iron overhears an attack being planned and naively runs after Karen to help him. In the confrontation, the thugs shoot at her, but Karen takes the bullet instead. Back home, Iron worries and regrets her mistake, feeling even guiltier until she realizes Karen's vest protected him. She hugs him, and Karen once again lets his emotions take over, but their moment is interrupted by his subordinates. Later, Jason tries to negotiate with Janelle, the villain's leader. Janelle pretends to cooperate, but secretly plans to use the password to access the project information. Wit demands a large sum of money and the release of Kron Chit and Tyrap in exchange for the information. Before we continue the video, let me ask you, have you subscribed to the channel yet? By subscribing, you guarantee access to all our amazing content and never miss an episode full of emotions and twists. Click the subscribe button now and become part of this community passionate about incredible stories. You won't regret it. Continuing the video, Karen discovers that a group of witnesses was eliminated just as they were about to expose crucial information. What the arms dealer doesn't know is that Jason was the one who eliminated all the traitors. Although Karen suspects it's the work of Black Iron, he rushes to speak with the commander. At that moment, he receives an alert informing him that his location was sent to Iron. Karen decides to go alone, believing this will prevent the thugs from discovering him. However, it is all part of Sayuri's plan to expose Wick. Sayuri knows Karen is nearby and takes all her men to capture him. Karen hides behind a boat, but his ammunition runs out, and he is severely injured. Despite this, his body disappears into the sea, prompting the thugs to search for him. Meanwhile, Iron is distraught over having no news about him. She wants to search for him, but is reminded by Saren that the commander ordered her protection at all costs. Saren also comments that Karen is more concerned about Iron's safety than his own mission. A young woman finds Karen and takes him home to save his life. Concerned about the risks she is taking, Karen warns her about the thugs pursuing him. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. The young woman answers and finds the thugs disguised as police officers. Anna manages to send them away, but her behavior raises their suspicions. After treating Karen's injuries, he continues to call out for Iron in his delirium. Meanwhile, Wick has not been eliminated because Daniel plans to use him as bait to lure Iron. Wick is imprisoned with Dr. Kron Chit and Tyrap to uncover Wick's plan. After a few days, Karen feels slightly better and uses the opportunity to search through Anna's belongings. She catches him, becomes furious, and threatens him with a gun. She demands to know who he is and why he's there, but Karen disarms her and tries to calm her down. Their argument is interrupted when the thugs return to finish their job. Karen fights them off, but Anna is shot in the arm. At the same time, Iron is informed that the captain has been located and is with an injured person, which leaves her confused. Later, Karen arrives with Anna, and Iron rushes to treat her wound. Iron hugs Karen, but he ignores her, focused on Anna's condition. Feeling rejected, Iron confronts him in the bathroom, but Karen explains that he needs to focus on his work. In the middle of the night, Iron interrupts Karen's sleep, feeling his absence and wanting to know what happened. Though she doesn't ask directly, Karen senses her jealousy. He takes her to her room and tries to comfort her. The next day, Iron learns that Anna is a former lieutenant who left the army long ago. This raises suspicions among the team, with some believing Anna is untrustworthy. Coincidentally, Iron overhears this and starts suspecting Anna might be a spy. Matters worsen when Anna holds Iron hostage during an argument, prompting the others to threaten her. Karen intervenes and asks everyone to calm down, explaining that it was a misunderstanding. Without giving details, he asks them to wait for his return. Karen receives information about a group of missing civilians being investigated. He is sent undercover to gather more information about their disappearance. However, it is discovered that some bodies have been found lifeless on the beach with strange markings. Feeling guilty for failing to protect the villagers, Karen realizes they need a specialist to examine the bodies and calls for Dr. Pat. Iron initially doesn't understand the situation, but becomes more upset upon seeing Anna close to Karen. He asks her to examine the bodies, but explains that it's a secret mission and he can't reveal much. Iron discovers the victims were exposed to a lethal substance, raising more questions about the enemy's plans. Meanwhile, Anna is questioned by Purit, who believes she's untrustworthy and might be trying to steal Karen from Iron. Anna denies any interest in taken men, but makes it clear that if Karen were single, she might pursue him. This is what Anna says, referring to Karen, and it obviously makes Iron uncomfortable. From that moment on, Anna moves in with them, which fills Iron with jealousy. Meanwhile, Kronchit reveals his plan and confronts one of the thugs, but the others capture him and beat him up, leaving him in the infirmary, where the hacker also happens to be. Tyrap questions Kronchit about the plan, but Sayuri interrupts him. Later, they take Tyrap, as his project is at risk. Jason fears the army might discover what they're doing, especially after dumping the test bodies into the sea. However, Tyrap assures him the substance dissipates within 24 hours and claims they only need Iron's formula to make the substance even more powerful. Iron becomes jealous when she sees Karen smiling too much at Anna, but he tries to show her that she's the only one he cares about. Later, Karen and his friend go to a club searching for a gangster linked to the villagers' disappearances. Pretending to know where the villagers are being taken, Anna dresses seductively and manages to lure the gangster. However, just as they're about to act, another man eliminates the gangster, leaving the team without any leads. They need to discover what substance is causing the villagers' deaths. Iron begs Saren to take her to the lab, and he agrees without informing the captain. While they're in the lab, Karen shows up, angry about their recklessness. He scolds Iron, saying he cannot protect her there, and takes her back home. Iron insists she's only trying to find a solution, but Karen argues she cannot put others' lives at risk. The two argue loudly, and Anna overhears them. She approaches Karen to console him. Later, Karen tries to reconcile with Iron by preparing her breakfast. Although initially stressed about her research, she becomes emotional seeing Karen's gesture. Later, noticing Karen leaving with Anna, Iron, overcome with jealousy, follows them to the beach and watches, believing they're happy together. However, she doesn't realize Anna is helping Karen understand her better. Suddenly, Iron feels something in her eyes. Karen approaches to check on her, but she misunderstands the situation. Due to stress, Iron faints and Karen helps her. When she regains consciousness, she prefers to be alone but begins to recognize how much the situation affects her. Karen tries to clarify the misunderstanding, but Iron, upset, refuses to listen. He mentions that he loves her, but she falls asleep before hearing his words. Despite everything, the two reconcile and act as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, Kronchit discovers more about Tyrap's plan. He realizes Tyrap is working with Jason and decides to expose his betrayal. Kronchit creates a new plan with Jason to lure Iron. They find her unconscious on the beach, and both the commander and Karen interrogate her. Iron, however, believes Tyrap is not a traitor and insists on speaking with him. The commander and his team surround an abandoned building and, as Tyrap had informed, find Daniel engaged in shady dealings. After a chase, Daniel escapes. Although disappointed, the commander decides to trust Tyrap and allows Iron to speak with him. She makes the mistake of mentioning the vaccine given to Toon. Tyrap asks for the vaccine's location, but Karen quickly takes Iron away before she can answer. He reprimands her for disclosing confidential information. At the same time, Iron has a relapse and rushes to see her adopted son. She convinces Karen to ask Tyrap for help with the vaccine. Tyrap then uses the distraction to contact Jason. Meanwhile, Jason prepares an attack, sending several thugs to the safe house where Iron is hiding. Meanwhile, Iron is reviewing her father's projects and discovers that he canceled one of Tyrap's due to the damage it could cause. She begins to suspect that it's the same substance being used by the rivals. Suddenly, she is surprised by Anna, who warns her about the danger outside. Karen confronts the thugs and manages to knock out Daniel, but Sayuri intercepts the girls. After facing the enemies, they manage to escape, leaving Daniel injured. They quickly inform the commander, but don't understand how their location was discovered. Iron rushes to show what she was investigating and suspects that Tyrap was forced to cooperate with the rivals. Meanwhile, Toon is in danger. He was being cared for by Chatri and another sergeant, but Jason and his men take over the hospital. Chatri takes the boy and Tyrap to hide them elsewhere, leaving a friend to save the hostages. Unfortunately, Jason finds the sergeant and plans to take Toon. The boy manages to escape and hide in a warehouse. Karen and his team arrive at the hospital, accompanied by Iron, who pleads with them to save Toon. The rivals intend to use him as a test subject. The special forces eliminate the thugs and rescue the hostages, but Iron doesn't find Toon among them and disobeys orders by entering the building. Karen, worried about her, refuses to leave without the boy. After some time, they chase Jason to the parking lot. However, the thugs' vests are more resistant, making the confrontation difficult. Karen confronts Jason, but is easily defeated. The rivals escape, and Karen finds his friend gravely injured. The sergeant had been injected with the lethal substance, and there's nothing they can do to save him. Meanwhile, Tyrap uses his blood to fuse with the lethal substance and tests it on Y, who dies instantly. Everyone is shocked by the results, but Tyrap proudly celebrates his success. Crone Chit begs him to stop, but Tyrap insists on continuing to prove he was right and that Crone Chit was wrong to cancel his research. Karen later receives information about Jason and realizes how dangerous he is. The rival contacts Iron and arranges a meeting. Karen, now more determined, leads his team to a building where they believe they have cornered the enemy. However, Jason reveals WH's body, and one of his subordinates, who is willing to sacrifice himself, threatens to blow everything up if anyone shoots. Jason boasts, claiming that with this substance, he can rule everyone. Unable to capture him, Karen lets him go. Next, the commander orders them to destroy the base where the rival's lab is located. The special forces arrive at the island base, and Iron joins the mission to save her father. During the operation, they find Toon, but also discover several explosives packed with a lethal substance. Karen orders Iron to leave while he searches for Crone Chit. However, the commander suspects that Crone Chit has been killed and orders an evacuation before the area explodes. Karen disobeys the order and continues the search, but they're soon surrounded by the thugs. Fortunately, they use special bullets capable of piercing the enemy's vests, taking down several of them. Daniel confronts Karen and reveals that he killed Crone Chit. Karen captures Jason and uses him as a shield to escape. He returns to the group, and Iron asks about her father. Karen tells her the truth, but also mentions that Crone Chit might still be alive. The planes attack and destroy the rival's base, but they discover that Jason escaped with his men. Iron begins to act distant toward Karen, disappointed that he couldn't save her father, although she doesn't blame him directly. The commander, calmer after the advance against the rivals, asks Karen to continue taking care of Iron because he wants her to be happy. Karen accepts his mission and promises to do everything possible to make Iron happy. Unfortunately, things get complicated when Toon suffers another relapse because their rivals can't provide more vaccine doses. Iron feels guilty, believing her research is costing her the people she loves. However, Karen helps her understand that her project can help humanity. Sadly, the doctor informs them that Toon doesn't have much time left, and they decide to fulfill his last dream. They take him to the military base to see a fighter jet. Toon is overjoyed, but hours later, he becomes exhausted and falls asleep in Iron's arms, who weeps as she loses him. Karen stays by her side, comforting her and convincing her to resume her research. The next morning, they inform the commander, and Karen's mother discovers the marriage was a lie. However, seeing that her son is in love, she accepts Iron as her daughter-in-law. Iron, jokingly, tells Karen he'll have to work hard to win her approval. Iron focuses on the Nadia project, especially after the minister opens another research center. She spends a lot of time in the lab, affecting her health. To distract her, Karen begins courting her, taking her on romantic dates. During one outing, while in the restroom, Iron sees Sayuri's shadow and runs to alert Karen, but she can't find him. At the same time, Kanan calls to inform them that a government building has been taken over by rivals. The team gathers outside the building, and Iron insists on going inside with them. She believes Sayuri wants to show her something and is proven right when she finds her father connected to tanks containing the lethal substance. Kanan tries to get her out of the building, but, worried for her safety, knocks her unconscious to remove her. Shortly after, the substance is activated, leaving a trail of death. Later, they discover the rivals didn't flee abroad. It was all part of their plan to deceive the army into believing they'd been defeated. Even the tanks found on the island were fake. The commander, understanding the gravity of the situation, sends Karen and his team to the rivals' new base. Before leaving, Karen bids farewell to Iron. Though she acts indifferent, she reveals she's not angry but scared of losing him, like the others she's loved. Karen promises to return and holds her tightly. The team arrives at the rivals' base and disperses to rescue the villagers. Karen allows himself to be captured to discover where the substance is stored, while the rest of the team infiltrates the base disguised as part of the gang. They destroy weapons and eliminate enemies in the process. Meanwhile, Karen and Purik confront Sayuri and her men. Sayuri is injured in the neck and dies, triggering Daniel's fury. He attempts to kill Karen as the special forces are surrounded. Daniel tries to shoot Karen, but Jason intervenes. Jason, a former soldier, reveals he left the military because it didn't make him rich. His plan is to activate the substance to wipe out the team. However, Chatri and others arrive in time to stop him. Tyrap, obsessed with his research, uploads all his findings to Jason. When Jason underestimates Karen, his father, outraged, kills Tyrap to proceed with the plan. The mission isn't over yet. The team must intercept 3 transports carrying the substance. During the operation, Karen loses control of his plane and his radar disappears. Iron is devastated by the news, and the commander sends a team to find him. Karen's mother consoles Iron, reminding her that Karen always wanted to be his nation's pride. Thankfully, Karen is eventually found, and he reunites with Iron. A month later, Karen nervously considers proposing to Iron. His friends face the same dilemma with their girlfriends. They team up to plan proposals, but Karen's is the first to fail when Iron feels dizzy before he can even start. Purik's attempt with Pac is interrupted by a work call. Similarly, the other friends also fail, as the women suspect their plan. The 4 women communicate, and discover their boyfriends are planning the same thing. To teach them a lesson, they decide to make them work harder. Eventually, each man successfully proposes. In the final scene, Karen approaches Iron, confessing how important she's become in his life. He kneels and proposes, and she joyfully accepts. They seal the moment with a sweet kiss, bringing the story to a close. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a like so YouTube can deliver my summaries to you every day. That way, you'll never miss out on amazing episodes. See you in the next video. See you later.